Welcome to The Explainer. Sometimes a single word can hold an entire story. And today, we're digging into a fascinating one. We're looking at how changing just one word, from political economy to economics, quietly reshaped, well, everything, from how we see our own wallets to how we build our entire societies.
So why the change? Why do we call it economics now and not political economy? And the thing is, this isn't just about semantics or some boring academic debate. No way. This was a deliberate, calculated transformation of a moral philosophy into a technical science. And trust me, understanding that switch is absolutely key to making sense of our world today.
Okay, so at its core, the shift was really this. On one side, you had political economy. It was a moral science, asking these big questions like, what makes a society just? And then on the other side, you have economics, which became a technical science. Its question was much more narrow. What's the most efficient choice? So you see, it wasn't just some simple rebrand. This was a complete change in the mission statement for the entire field.
So to really get this, we've got to jump in our time machine for a second. We need to go back and see what political economy actually was. Because, it wasn't some separate university department with its own building. It was part of a much, much bigger conversation, a philosophical one, really, about how we should all live together.
And the name itself kind of gives the game away. It's rooted in the Greek oikonomia, which means household management. So when you put political in front of it, political economy was literally about managing the public's household, the entire nation's household, for the well-being of everyone. The original thinkers, they saw their work as deeply moral and political. It wasn't just about numbers, it was about values.
And get this, even Adam Smith, the guy everyone calls the father of modern economics, he wasn't sitting around building abstract mathematical models. Look at what he was asking. It was a fundamentally ethical question. How can we set up a society where private interest, people doing their own thing, actually leads to public virtue, to the good of everyone? That's a moral question, not a technical one.
Right. And for these classical economists, this was the whole point. You couldn't just separate the economic analysis from the big questions about creating a just society. It was all tangled together. You had social classes, the distribution of wealth, questions about fairness, and that's why it was taught as part of moral philosophy, or law, or history, not as its own separate science.
But then things started to change. In the late 19th century, a new group of thinkers came along, and they decided it was time for a radical reinvention. They looked over at the natural sciences, especially physics, with all its elegant laws and certainties, and they got a serious case of what you might call physics envy.
Ben, look, this transformation didn't happen overnight. Not at all. It was a methodical, decades-long process. You can see it right here. It starts with Adam Smith's moral inquiry in 1776. Then, in the 1870s, this big shift towards the individual. Then you get the first standard textbook, the first university department, and it all leads to 1932, when a new, modern definition of economics gets locked in place, one that aims to be completely value-free.
So that big change in the 1870s was called the marginalist revolution, and it was a really profound shift in focus. It went from thinking about society and production to thinking about the individual and consumption. It stopped asking, how does society produce wealth, and started asking, how much psychological satisfaction, or utility as they called it, does one person get from buying one more thing? It's a total flip.
And this quote from Leon Walras, wow, it just perfectly captures that physics envy we were talking about. He literally wanted to make economics into a science that resembles physics in every respect. The whole goal was to make the market seem like a natural, self-regulating system, like planets orbiting the sun. And think about the implication of that. If the market is a law of nature, well, who are we to question it or interfere with it?
So all of this leads up to this moment, this definition from Lionel Robbins in 1932. And this is huge, because it's pretty much still the bedrock definition you'll find in Econ 101 textbooks today. Look at it. It's the science of scarcity. It's about ends and means. It makes economics totally neutral. The field is no longer supposed to ask if your goals, your ends, are any good. It only asks if you're using your scarce means efficiently to get there.
But, as you might guess, achieving this shiny new scientific status, well, it came at a pretty steep cost. In this quest for certainty and objectivity, the new field of economics had to cut some things away. Our source material calls them 3 major intellectual amputations. A strong word, but you'll see why.
Yeah. So this pursuit of scientific purity, it meant cutting away the very things that political economy was all about. Specifically, ethics, society, and power.
Let's break that down. First, ethics. Economics could no longer ask if our goals are good, only how to get there efficiently. Then society. Poof. Humans became these isolated atoms, totally stripped of their history, their culture, their institutions. And finally, power. The model of a perfect market just assumes nobody has any real power, completely ignoring the reality of giant corporations and political influence. So by removing all this stuff, the new economics created this beautiful, clean, mathematical model that was, well, dangerously disconnected from the messy reality of the world we actually live in.
And the consequences of that disconnect, they can be massive. I mean, look no further than the 2008 financial crisis. This quote says it all. The mainstream economic models didn't just fail to see it coming, they had theoretically ruled it out. Their assumptions made a crisis of that scale literally impossible. That's how disconnected they were.
Okay, but the story doesn't just end there with disaster. In the wake of failures like the 2008 crisis, there's a growing movement of thinkers who are now trying to put those amputated pieces back together. They're trying to build a much more complete and, frankly, more realistic picture of our economy.
And the good news is they're not starting from scratch. There are all these rich, alternative traditions to draw from. You've got institutional economics, which says you can't separate the economy from laws and power. Post-Keynesian, which says instability is part of the system. Feminist economics, which points out all the unpaid work that GDP ignores. And ecological economics, which reminds us, hey, the economy exists on a finite planet. All of these schools have always been arguing for bringing these essential human elements back into the picture. So when you boil it all down, rethinking economics isn't about throwing everything out and starting over. The core task really is to reintegrate those three amputated pieces we talked about, ethics, society, and power, and put them right back at the center of how we analyze the world.
And ultimately, what this is all about is changing the central question we ask. It's about shifting from just asking about efficiency or what people prefer to buy, to asking a much deeper, much more human question. And this quote from the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen nails it. Instead of asking what people prefer, it asks what people are able to do and be. It's about human flourishing. And that question, well, that brings us full circle, right back to the big moral questions where this whole story began.